Chapter 4 A Sign from Above. During the days that followed, an uneasy truce developed between Carrie and myself. He continually tried to maintain an air of anger and disapproval, once again trying to prove that he knew more than I did about dating. He would talk to me through May, signing and delivering his lectures aloud, even though we both knew she could hear nothing. He claimed May needed to learn what to do and what not to do on dates, since I had obviously never been taught the rules. He sounded like Daddy, complaining about all the young people being too forward, too advanced for their age. At times when he put on Daddy's face and took Daddy's voice, I was afraid I would laugh, so I turned away to hide my smile. Carrie didn't have to imitate Daddy's temper. He had one of his own that was bad enough. "Now that you're getting older, May," he lectured, shifting his eyes to me, "you have to be careful that you don't waste your time on foolish boys, or boys who think of girls as trophies and not as people." "She doesn't have any idea what you're talking about, Carrie," I said. "That's more the reason to talk to her now, before it's too late. You're a big influence on her," he growled. "A negative one," he added. "What's that supposed to mean, Carrie?" "Just what it means. What she sees you do, she'll think that's the best thing to do, the right thing to do." "I haven't done anything in front of her that I shouldn't," I protested. "Maybe not yet," he muttered. He was infuriating, but it was better for me to bite my lip and swallow back my words. He simply continued to make his speeches, talking about boys as if they were possessions. Poor little May was smart enough and sensitive enough to know that she shouldn't contradict him, but she looked at me continually to see if I would reinforce the challenge. Carrie said, I said nothing and looked away. Later, when we were alone, she asked me why Carrie was so mad at the boys in school. I told her he was trying to protect her. He was worried about her. She fixed her large hazel eyes on me and waited for me to say more, but I couldn't. Sadness was like a spider weaving a web around us. Carrie's face of gloom cast large shadows in our house. Whenever he entered a room May and I were in, her eyes swung from me to him and back to me in anticipation of some nasty wave that might be drawn from the sea of depression. Carrie spent more and more time alone, up in his attic workshop. At school, he stayed to himself, even in the cafeteria. Sometimes he sat with some of the boys and other fishermen families, but his eyes were always on Robert and me, making me feel self-conscious and making me feel guilty for every laugh and every smile. Robert tried to be friendly toward Carrie, tried to have conversations with him, but Carrie would only respond in monosyllabic grunts, usually hurrying off and simply ignoring him. I told Robert it would just take time. Carrie saw how nice Robert was. He would stop being so protective and concerned. "I suppose if I had a sister who looked like you, I'd be walking around with a shotgun over my shoulder too," he told me. It brought a smile to my face and laughter to my lips. Robert had a way of parting the clouds and bringing the sunshine to every desolate moment. I never known anyone as hopeful or cheerful. After I met his parents, I decided it was because of them, because they appeared to be so happy and loved themselves. "A flower blossom best in my happy pot," Aunt Belinda once told me when I visited her home. I thought she was referring to Grandma Olivia not being a flower that showed much bloom. I thought she was complaining about her own family life, but I couldn't get her to explain any of the things she said. Most of the time she would just follow something with a laugh, and the words would float from us and dissipate like smoke. I met Robert's parents one afternoon when school was ended early because of teachers' conference. I asked Carrie if he wanted to come along to see how Robert's parents were fixing up the Sea Mariana. Why would I want to go waste my time looking at rundown tourist hovel? Carrie snapped in response. And why would you? It's not rundown anymore, Carrie, and it's certainly not a hovel. Who's picking up May? He countered. I will if you want, I said. If I want? You used to care about your little sister, he remarked coldly. You know I care about her, Carrie. That's not fair, I said. I'll pick her up. Never mind, you'll probably forget. You'll probably be too distracted by Lover Boy, and she'll be standing there alone and afraid, he said. I'm never that distracted, Carrie. But even if I were, May could come home herself easily. Sure, and not hear the car that goes across the road. She knows how to cross the road. I don't think going to see some junk house for tourists is more important than May's safety, he said. I'll look after her. He turned and marched off before I could respond. Are you feeling all right? Robert asked me when we left school that afternoon. You haven't said a word. I'm fine, I said. It's just my brother gets me so angry sometimes. I feel like screaming. Maybe you should, Laura. Maybe it's time that you let him know how you really feel, Robert said. Maybe. I looked at him, his face full of concern, and I knew that he was right. I'd better wipe the frown off my face before I meet your parents, I said, or they'll think you've chosen a witch for a girlfriend. He laughed and we got in his car and drove to the Sea Marina. Although the building itself had been neglected, the property on which it lay was prime seaside real estate. My father's always been pretty handy, Robert told me as we drove up. His father was on the ladder repairing a loose clapboard. I knew that the Sea Marina had once been one of the most interesting houses in the area. It had been built as a mansion for Captain Bellwood. As with many great houses, the family lost its fortune and eventually converted their home into a rooming house for tourists. A sign bearing the words "The Sea Marina" was slapped over the entry doors, and a new history for the building began. It was a 3-story building with 22 rooms available for renting. Robert and his parents lived in the downstairs rear of the house. Above the roof was a large cupola with a round dormer. The house had been constructed with a great deal of decorative detail. The entire outside of the building had to be stripped and sanded before it was repainted. The cement steps that had cracked and chipped were replaced with as were a half a dozen cracked, broken windows. I had ridden my bike past the Sea Marina before and knew how run down it was before Robert's parents began this remodeling. It was no wonder he was occupied and working so much of the time. Mr. Royce saw us drive up and waved. Immediately I saw that Robert had inherited his smile from his father. When we drew closer, he came down the ladder, and I also noticed that Robert shared his blue eyes as well. His father was an inch or so taller, with the same lean, muscular frame. "What are you hooky players up to?" he asked. "I told you school was out early today, Dad," Robert said. His father winked at me. "Yeah, he told me, but can I believe him?" "Yes, you can, Mr. Royce," I said quickly, and he laughed. "I saw you have a loyal partner there, Robert. You're going to introduce us or just stand there looking foolish?" "This is Laura Logan, Dad." "Laura." My father, Bob Hope. Bob Hope. If I was a good enough comedian, do you think I'd be out here sweating over clapboard? Hi, Laura. Well, what do you think so far? He said, stepping back with his hands on his hips. We all looked at the sea marina. It's looking good, Mr. Royce. It's going to be beautiful. Thank you. Robert had his hand in all this, but you should see that what his mother's accomplished inside. Come on, Robert said. It's nice meeting you, Mr. Royce. He smiled and gave Robert a look of approval that broadened his shoulders even more. Feel free to drop by any time, Laura. We could always use another hand clutching a paintbrush, he said. Dad, Robert protested. I'd like to, I said. It looks fun. Fun? You call this fun? He joked. I like this girl, Robert. Bye, Dad, Robert said, rolling his eyes and seizing my hand. Come on, let's meet my mother, he added in a deep, low voice filling me with trepidation. We went up the front stairs and inside. Unlike the outside, the inside of the inn looked like it needed work and weeks of more work. The floors were still bare. The walls in the sitting room had only been sanded down and prepped for paint. Wires hung from the ceiling. Ma, Robert called from the hallway. We heard what sounded like a collapsing tower of pots and pans, and then a curse. Uh-oh, Robert said. He widened his eyes and held my hand as we continued down the hallway toward what had to be the kitchen. Robert's mother was sitting on the kitchen floor, her face buried in her hands. Pots and pans were scattered around her. She wore a pair of jeans and a flannel shirt, knotted at the bottom. The sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Her hair, Robert's color, was tied in a ponytail. When she lifted her face from her palms, I saw that she had the same soft, perfect features as her son, even though she was obviously upset at the moment. She had the complexion and youthful glint in her eyes that made her seem 10 years younger. When she focused on us, she smirked and leaned back on her hands. Welcome to the Sea Marina, she said. Dinner? She continued in a style imitating an English butler. We'll be slightly delayed due to the catastrophe. What happened? Robert asked. Those shelves I had put up, decided I had put them up in the wrong place and rebelled, she explained and pointed to where the brackets had come off the wall. I told you I would do that today, Robert said. I didn't think it was going to be that big of a deal. Obviously, I underestimated the weight of my cookery. She gazed at me and smiled. Are you a new cook? What? Ma, you know who this is, Robert said impatiently. Oh, she added and jumped to her feet, brushing off her jeans. The lobster girl. What? Ma! Hi, I'm Jane Royce, she said, coming forward to shake my hand. Robert's told me everything about you, so I don't have to ask you a single question. Ma, he sounds like a confused sheep. It's Ba, Robert. Come on, she said, taking my hand. Let me show you my jewel. I looked back helplessly as she pulled me along back through the hallway in the dining room. So far, the only finished room I'd seen. It had a long, dark maple table with a very comfortable-looking captain chairs. There was a silver candelabra and a very pretty placemats that looked hand-stitched. There were 2 teardrop chandeliers that sparkled like ice in the sun. Hanging across the room was another oil painting that I recognized as one of Kenneth Child's earlier works. It was a beach scene with terns just starting their turn toward the setting sun. Well, it's beautiful, Mrs. Royce. Please call me Jane. I call my mother-in-law Mrs. Royce. I laughed as Robert came up beside us. You want to see the dock? He asked. Why would she want to see the dock? It's uglier than a one-eyed bulldog in heat. Ma, maybe we should help your mother with those shelves, Robert, I suggested. Now here's a girl I could grow to adopt. When you're ready to run away from home, this is the place, she said. She's very pretty, Robert. You didn't exaggerate. Mm-hmm. Don't say it. Wait a minute, Robert, she said, pressing her forefinger to her cheek as she feigned deep thought. I have it. Why don't you call me Mrs. Royce, she suggested, and I laughed. Come on, she said, taking my hand again. We'll go back to the kitchen and you can tell me all about life on Cape Cod while I pack my pots and pans. I looked at Robert, who shrugged. I guess we'll help Mrs. Royce, he said, and we all laughed. It was a wonderful afternoon. I never thought I would enjoy working so much. They wanted me to stay for dinner, but I didn't think it was right on such short notice. I explained how I usually helped my mother make dinner and I should be getting home. Despite all the restoration work ahead of them, the Royces were happy and confident. The atmosphere and the scene of partnership among them made me envious. Robert's parents seemed so much younger than mine and so much more relaxed. I felt their love for each other and how concerned they were for each other's happiness. No wonder Robert has such a warm and hopeful personality, I thought. Well, he said as we drove away, I warned you my mother was a character. I love her, Robert. She's great. Yeah, I guess I'm lucky, he said. And now, he added, looking at me, I'm even luckier. Because the school year was approaching its end, studying for exams and preparing for our last projects was very important. Although Robert and I didn't share any classes, we thought it might be fun to study together. For that purpose, he came to my house the following Saturday. I had already told my mother and mentioned it to Daddy just before Robert was due to arrive. Daddy and May were playing a game of checkers in the living room at the time. He paused and turned to me. Seems like you're becoming the talk of the town, you and your boyfriend, Laura, Daddy said. No, we're not, Daddy. I started to laugh at the idea. Grandma Olivia thinks so, he added. You know how all the news worms its way up to her. I know, I grimaced, in the expectation of what Grandma Olivia had told him. Maybe you're getting a little close and serious too fast, Daddy suggested. I'm not, really, Daddy. Everyone's expecting that you'll go off to college, Laura. Not many Logans have. Your mother tells me that you've shown some interest in becoming a teacher. I will become a teacher, Daddy. Lots of girls make plans and they meet someone and lose their heads, Laura, he warned. I'm not lots of girls, Daddy. I'm me, I said. He nodded, his eyes softening. Daddy never liked chastising me. And on more than one occasion, Carrie suffered because of that. Poor Carrie was always blamed for things we did together, no matter how much I protested and defended him. Daddy believed that because Carrie was a boy, he should be more responsible. Once when we were 10, we had gone down to the beach at night and got ourselves soaked, and he took the strap to Carrie. I shouted and cried outside the door of Carrie's room. Afterward, I went in and put soothing cream on his welts. He never cried or complained, and when I did, moaning that I should have gotten at least half of the beating, he looked at me and said, What for, Laura? I can bear it for both of us. I'm happy to take your half. Because Carrie was always so devoted to me, it was hard seeing him upset and angry now. I was hoping Carrie would accept Robert soon, and we'd all be happy together. Daddy said no more about my relationship with Robert, and he didn't oppose our studying together at the house. Carrie didn't say anything nasty about Robert coming over as I thought he might, so I asked him if he wanted to study with us. I'm not going to waste my time on that, he replied. It's not a waste of time, Carrie. I know you're not doing well in some of your classes. What of it? I'm not going to college, you are. I'll be working with Dad in our business. Where I belong, he snapped. You know you want to build boats, Carrie. It would be good for you to take some college courses in engineering and design. I don't need to sit in some stuffy college classroom filled with snobby kids just to learn what I already know, he said. He did know an awful lot about boats. He never had reading difficulties when it came to that, and there wasn't a boat, a design, or a concept that he wasn't aware of. Daddy was proud of the way Carrie could hold his own discussion about our boat and about sailing. Daddy's friends would often say the same thing. Some of them even asked Carrie for advice. If you change your mind, I won't, he declared. I have things to do on the dock. Robert had to work until after lunch, but around 2:30 he drove up. I was waiting for him at our front stoop. Mommy and May had gone into town to do shopping. Hi, he said, getting out quickly, his books and notebooks under his arm. We exchanged a quick kiss. I hated leaving. There's still so much work to do, but my mother practically threw me out. So, he said, where shall we go? Up to my room, I said. I'd been planning on studying there and had my own work set out. We'll be less distracted. It's too beautiful of a day. If we stay out here, we won't get anything done. It was one of those warm days when the breeze seemed like lips gently brushing my cheeks and the clouds hung lazily over the turquoise sky. The sea conspired with the golden sand to tempt me into daydreams, beckoning me with its soft spray and dazzling whitecaps. Good idea, he said, his eyes full of more love and devotion than an ocean could ever hold. I'd never had a boy in my room before. Just the idea put butterflies in my stomach. We paused as we entered the foyer. Your mother's not home? She took May shopping. My father and Carrie are down at the dock. Oh, he looked embarrassed, shy at being with me in an empty house. I took his hand. Come on, I said. We've got a lot to do. I led him upstairs into my room. I made my room spotless, polishing and cleaning all morning. Twice Carrie looked in with a dark expression of disapproval on his face. This is a nice room, Robert said. He entered and looked at my posters of rock and movie stars. Who gave you these? He asked, indicating to the shelves crowded with stuffed animals and ceramic dolls. They're a collection of ceramic and pure cats. Daddy, Mommy, and Carrie for birthdays and special occasions, I replied. He smiled at the small table with the miniature tea set and the big doll in the chair. You don't still play with this, do you? He teased. Sometimes with May, I added. He laughed and approached my canopy bed. Looks very comfortable. You can sit on it, I said, and he did, bouncing and smiling. The bedding, the comforter, the pillows all matched the mauve shade of the canopy. In the center was 2 fluffy pillows and a large stuffed cat. He reached out to pet it. It looks so real. I had to be sure, he said. I went to my desk where I had an open notebook beside the pile of school textbooks. Nice view, he went toward the window beside my bed. We came up here to get away from all that, I reminded him gently. Right. You can have that chair, I said, pointing to the one beside the desk. Thank you, Miss Logan, he said with a short bow. He sat and opened his math book. I hate these formulas, he muttered. But he didn't lift his eyes from the page. We both worked silently. Occasionally he would look up and our gazes would meet, and we would smile and look down quickly. Would you like something cold to drink? I offered. Sure. Cranberry juice okay? Fine, he said. I'll be right back. I hurried out and down the stairs and put ice cube in glasses and brought them back up, filled with our homemade cranberry juice. Robert was lying on my bed, his hands behind his head, gazing up at the canopy when I returned. I paused, smiling. Sorry, he said, sitting up guiltily. It just looks so inviting. No, it's all right. I handed him his juice. It's good, he said. I sat beside him and drank my own. Why do they make us take these final exams when it just gets so beautiful outside? It's cruel, he said, and I laughed. At the end of the school year, Robert, what do you expect? A little more consideration, he kidded. We gazed at each other. I felt my heart begin to pound as he leaned closer and closer until our lips met. I've been wanting to do that for the last hour, he said. Me too. He took the glass from my hand, and then he leaned over and we kissed again. I let myself fall back slowly and gently, and he lay down beside me, stroking my hair and kissing my cheeks. You're on my mind day and night, he said. You're the first thing I think about when I wake up and the last thing before I close my eyes to sleep. On the days that we don't see each other, I hate the hours until we do. He kissed me again. He brought his lips to my neck. Laura, he whispered, I love you so much. I love you too, Robert. I let his hands go and move around my body. My heart felt like a clenched fist pounding inside my chest. When I was younger, I read novels in which girls were seduced or went too far. I swore I would never be like them, no matter how handsome the boy or how much I thought I loved him. How, I wondered, could your body make you do things that you didn't want to do? How could any pleasure be so great that you would disregard all the warnings to yourself and surrender? Yet that was exactly what was happening to me. I felt like moving faster and faster with no return. It was like one wave after another, one overwhelming, undauntulating sensation after another, sweeping me away from the shore of caution. Robert, I pleaded, if we don't stop, we won't stop. I can't help wanting you, Laura. We're not ready yet, Robert. Let's be ready, please, I pleaded, knowing if he refused, if he kissed me once more, I would simply fall back and throw caution to the wind. He held his breath and then pulled back. I lie there breathless. Robert stepped off the bed. I hadn't even realized how entrenched we were. Suddenly I heard the deep, long creak in the ceiling, and my heart stopped. Wait, I said, pulling him back under the canopy. What? He studied my face. Do you want me to? No, just be quiet for a minute, I ordered. What? He smiled with confusion. Why? There was another creak, and then another, then footsteps. Carrie's upstairs, I said in a low voice. Robert's eyes widened. Huh? Why didn't you tell me? I didn't know he was there. I never heard him come in or go upstairs, Laura, and your door's open. We would have seen him go by, wouldn't we? Or, he added with a dreadful pause, he went there while we were occupied. No, he must have been there the whole time, Robert. We would have heard him coming, and the steps. Those steps creak so loudly. It sounds like Carrie might step through them sometimes. Robert shook his head. I don't understand. I thought no one was home. You said, I guess he came back when I was outside waiting for you. So, Robert said, shrugging after another moment's thought, he's been upstairs. What of it? No harm done. We'll just get back to the books, he smiled. How could I explain? How could I tell him about the peephole in the ceiling when I couldn't face Carrie about it myself? Now I had to, I thought. More than ever, now I had to. But first, Robert said, I'd better cool off. He went into the bathroom. I rose and went to my doorway listening. Carrie was as silent as a ghost now. Okay, Robert said, emerging. Let's get back to it. I looked at him once more, and then I looked at the attic, and I returned to my desk. We did study and talk and studied some more. We made plans for the summer months, and Robert talked about his college plans. Actually, you and Carrie have a lot more common than Carrie wants to admit, I said. I bet you could design a boat if he would like. Maybe I would do that for fun if I didn't think he would bite my head off, Robert said. He won't. He and I are going to have a real heart-to-heart, I promised. The front door slammed and we heard Mommy and May talking in excited voices. It's getting late, I better get back. I'll just go down and say hello to your mother. Carrie's still upstairs, he asked. Yes, I said, gazing at the ceiling and the hole that fortunately Robert had not noticed. We went downstairs and Robert talked to Mommy and signed to May for a while. He learned some new words with her, and then I walked him to his car. See you tomorrow, he said. I'll get away in the afternoon for that walk on the beach. Okay. He gave me a quick kiss and got into his car. I stood there and watched him disappear until I heard the front door open and close behind me. Carrie stood there glaring at me. He started down the steps towards the beach and the dock. Just a minute, Carrie, I said. What? We have to talk, I said. I have nothing to say. I have to get to the boat. Well, I have something to say, Carrie Logan, and you better stop and listen. He paused reluctantly and turned toward me. Talk about what? About the ceiling in my room, I said, and walked toward him.